What's up, Beamer Bros? Thanks for joining us once again. Today we have a very special video planned, but before we go any further, go down below, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon, and give us a thumbs up. We really appreciate it. So what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna be rebuilding an M20B25 cylinder head from the bottom up. And the reason why we wanna do this is because a lot of new people out there that have an E30 or anything that's M20 powered, they have a lot of questions about the valve train because it looks like the most complex part of the engine, but it's actually not as scary as it looks. I remember when I first did it, I probably ruined some things from what I remember, and I didn't have any guidance really. At the time, the E30 scene was a lot smaller than it is now, so there wasn't a lot of people out there willing to help. What we want to do is just lend a helping hand to everybody out there and just show how we do this. It's not the end-all, be-all solution to how to do this, but I'm sure there's some helpful information in there. Without further ado, let's get to it. All right guys, so first things first, when you get started, you want to make sure this is as clean as possible. We power wash this thing pretty well, so there's no like fine dirt in there, but there's still some grimy spots. I mean, if you can take this to a machine shop and get it dunked in their tank, their parts washer, that's probably your best bet. Or if you get it resurfaced, which we did, but we couldn't get all the gunk off. So you want to make sure that your seats are nice and clean. Now is a good time to lap the valves, which we already have. If you don't know how to lap the valves, we are including the process in the entire engine rebuild video. So the first thing you want to do, guys, is make sure that everything is as clean as possible. Make sure the guides are nice and clean. So we put the first valve through, this one being number 6 on the exhaust side. You put it through, right? You want to make sure there's no seal yet. And usually your valve stem seals come with a little sleeve. Put the sleeve over it, and then you're going to slide your new valve stem seal right over the top while holding the valve on the bottom so it doesn't fall. So once you slide that over, you're going to just gently push it down on the top of the valve guide. Take the sleeve out, and it should hold it in place, okay? If you can let it go of the valve and it doesn't slide out, then you should be fine. Just hold it there, because you're going to use your valve stem tool to seat the seal. All right, so now that you grabbed your valve stem tool, or your valve stem seal tool, just take a really light grip around it and just push it down. And keep an eye on it, and so that you can see when it's fully seated. By doing this, you shouldn't have any damage. Like, this shouldn't be damaged by the end of just pushing it down. And at that point, you're good. Your seal is good. Make sure it's fully seated all the way around. You can just take a really quick look and you're ready to go. So now we're ready to put the valve springs on. So in order to do this, guys, you need both valve springs because, again, this is a B25 head for a 325i. So it's a dual valve spring. So remember that it takes a couple pieces to actually have the full assembly. So there's a seat. Slide that over. Just make sure it's nice and seated. You can put your first valve spring in, and you'll see that it sits perfectly in the middle, right? That should slide right over it, and it should just sit perfectly where it needs to. There's no specific way to seat these. Like, they're not one way or the other. They're equal on both sides, if that makes any sense. So you should be able to just put them on. So now we have the top retainer here. That should fit this. The circumference of this part right here is the same as the smaller spring. So when you put it in there, it should sit flat, and it does. So at this point, you want to grab your C-clamp. I'm going to lift the camera up really quick. So this is a C-clamp valve spring tool. You can get it on eBay. It's very, very inexpensive. I think it's $30. Well, it just fell apart. I think it's like $30. It works every time. It's the best, cheapest tool that you can buy. Trust me. We'll leave a link in the description down below for this thing. We have the appropriate sizes of cups, and we're going to compress it. So the bottom cup is holding on to the bottom of the valve, or I guess the face of the valve, if that's what you want to call it. So that means it's giving it leverage to be able to push the top down as you press it, or as you thread it down. So once you've threaded it down enough to where you can see the ridges on the top of the valve, that's when you want to get your keepers ready. And your keepers do come in pairs. If you're not familiar with keepers, they are tapered. So they only go in one way, and you want to be very careful in making sure that they do seat the way they're supposed to. And if they don't, take them out and start over, because you don't want to chance your valve train falling apart because you didn't seat the keepers right. That's not a good idea. If they don't want to seat almost immediately, don't be afraid to compress the valve spring some more. It's not a big deal if you have to. There we go. This is what your valve should look like when it's installed with the spring. Nothing's crooked, everything looks even. Again, dual valve spring because it's 325i. Make sure the valve's seated all the way, right at the bottom. We can tip it over so you can see. See, seated all the way, there you go. Nothing really to it, just patience and using the right tools. So I'm gonna do the rest of them because the process is the exact same. And then we'll move on to installing the rocker shafts and the cam and the rest of the little tidbits. Alright, so now that we have the cam fully installed, the valve springs are in, everything's ready to go for us to put our rocker shafts into the head. One thing that's absolutely crucial that you pay attention to is the orientation, because these rocker shafts are, I guess you can say, directional. They only go in one way, or you can go in from either side of the head, but what I mean is that they're keyed. So at the end of each rocker shaft is this little notch. That notch is for when you put the lock at the end of the head. This is the front of the engine. So the side of the head that's facing the front of the engine has the lock. That's where the notch goes. So when you're orienting the shaft, you want to make sure that the oil feed line, this hole here, lines up with the cam lobe that you're facing. So if this hole here is facing the first cam lobe, then you're good. If it's facing the second cam lobe, then you're not good, because you're going to put the rocker shaft on the first cam lobe but not get lubrication, and that's bad. So now that we know that these are in the right way, then we can proceed. If you're not entirely sure of what I'm talking about, when you're disassembling this, go ahead and make marks and to signify which side it came out of, so you put it in the same way. You don't want to mix this up, guys. It'll starve your head, or your rockers, I should say, of oil, and they'll just prematurely wear until you have no rockers left. And you'll have a hard time doing valve adjustments too, trust me. Not fun. So let's go ahead and put them in. We're gonna knock these in gently while putting the rockers in one by one. But we're on the last one, and I just wanted to highlight a couple things because this can be kind of weird to deal with in the moment. But if you don't constantly adjust the rockers as you're pushing the rod through, then they will try to fall off because they're not secured with the clips yet. So you just got to make sure that every so often, say you tap it just maybe ½ inch in, go and check the rockers and make sure that they're not getting caught up on both cams. What'll end up happening is that they'll slide over, right? And they'll end up right in the middle of both cams. And if you try to push that, if you try to pull the cam over or turn the cam over, you're exerting pressure on the rocker shaft, and you could risk breaking the rocker because it's trying to push and pull at the same time. And yeah, bad news. So make sure you check and make sure that everything is clearing the way it's supposed to be. And with that being said, I'm going to push this last one in and show you what we have so far and put the clips in. I've seen this been forgotten in the past, not by us, but other people when we rip open their heads, and guess what? The rocker shaft lock is gone. So don't forget to put this in. And this goes right in the front of the head and locks the shafts so they don't spin and you don't lose oil, or lose oil pressure, I should say. Make sure when you're tapping this in, you're only tapping the lock and not the surface of the head. I'm using the round side of this ball peen hammer just to get the top of it. And once it goes all the way down, you're good. You don't have to go much farther. All right, Beamer Bros, we did it. We put the M20 head back together and it looks awesome. Everything is where it should be. If you guys have any other questions, please leave a comment down below. We always like to hear either feedback, questions, or even additional info on how you guys do it. We're always open to different ways of doing these things, and we're always happy to hear them. If you guys didn't already know or follow us on Instagram already, we dropped our first line of t-shirts on the website. If you go to superbeamerbros.com, hit the merch tab, and then browse our new merch section, you'll see that we drop t-shirts. We have hats on the way, we have stickers on the way. For those of you that are looking to support us even further, there's the way to do it. And until next time, guys, see you in the next one.